Welcome everybody. And welcome to those people who had booked in for Tuesdays. We had a couple of people from Tuesday that couldn't make it Tuesday and have contacted me and asked if they could have a recording. So a couple of those have hopped on to today's. So what I've done is I'm actually combining a bit of what I talked about on Tuesday to give you that background, and then also giving you some things on today's webinar, which is about building really dynamic teams. So we've got some new people on board today. That's going to give you both lots, which is great. And as I said, some that were booked for Tuesday and didn't make it, that will be great for them. So let's get on with it. Thank you for those joining me in your lunch breaks. I hope you can munch along while you're listening. All right, just changing the slide now. Excellent. All right, it's moving along nicely. A quick introduction for those of you who don't know me. I've got some on board that do know me, so I'll do this fairly quickly. The word change champion there throws a few people, and yes, it probably could be corny for some, but what it actually means is I do champion change. I actually love change. I see change as an opportunity for new stuff, for adventure, for continually growing and learning. And I also find that change is about looking at what are the options, exploring those, and what are our choices. So being a change champion coach fits really nicely with where I come from and my behaviours and my values and what I can bring to the desk, if you like, or to the table to help others grow. Workplace behaviour expert just actually encompasses everything that I've done throughout my career, which is more around people management and people development. So yes, you can have a look at the picture there. I definitely was a hairdresser in my past life, so I've been a trainer of apprentices and a business owner and a consultant to that industry. And then I did some change in my life and went and did some formal study. So the formal study, that is the background, if you like, of what I do now, is I have a master's in HR and in leadership, or the HR and leadership were the two specialisations in my master's. And I used that for 10 years in the public sector. And my last role in the public sector was as Regional Manager for Training Queensland in Central Queensland region. And I'm one of those people that really likes to make a difference. So towards the end of 2012, when I felt I could no longer make a difference, I moved on. And since then, I've added a little bit more to my learnings, which is the little logos down the side. I won't go into each one of them, but basically what that means is I'm accredited in actually delivering things around social and emotional intelligence, around communication frameworks like NLP, obviously accredited in DISC and workplace motivators, which we'll talk a bit more about today. And you know, you could say, okay, so what? I often say, so what? And you're right, because it actually means nothing if I don't use it to assist others. And for me, my driver is making a difference, and making a difference in my community, making a difference in helping others grow as well. That's why I love what I'm doing now, and I actually want more people to know about how I can assist them, or the learnings that they can get from me can assist them in their workplace. So let's move on. Today's all about building great working relationships. And really, my 3 webinars or 4 webinars that I do around this topic, that's basically the crux of it. That's it in a nutshell. DISC is about 2 things. It's actually about appreciating the similarities that we have. And by similarities, I mean similar focus, people that are working towards the same goals, you know, those people that are on the same page with you, like-minded people. They may sort of behave and react to things quite similarly to you. And then there are those that are different, noticeable different approach, sometimes causing some misunderstandings, people we just don't get. And it's harder to build relationships with these. And the message here is that we need to appreciate others and respect that each of us are on our own journey. That their take on the world may be different to yours due to the experiences that they have had and the stories that they take from that. But more on that later. So Workforce Vitality is the name of my business, and the stuff that I do on team building workshops, basically all of those dot points that are in front of you, it assists leaders and managers to manage their teams much better. Probably the most important one there is the fourth point, or the fourth tick, which is really important, and that is about recognising and understanding behaviours, both yours and others. And that's where DISC, D-I-S-C, which we'll talk about today, gives a really great framework, and it's a simple framework for you to be able to do that. The last dot point there is about motivators and drivers and understanding those. That's actually an extension to the DISC model I'm using today. It's called WPMOT. It's basically workplace motivators, and it's another round of workshops that I do that brings it down to the next level, or I should say up to the next level, of really understanding what motivates the behaviour behind that. This is about really getting to know your team members. Okay, what it's not about, this is really handy. There is no right or wrong way. This is not about judging someone, it's about recognising and understanding, not pointing the finger. This is not about cloning people. You know, it helps us to see that we're all different and appreciate that it actually takes all types to make a world, and I'm sure you've heard that saying. It also takes all types to make good teams. And I love the robots or tin men. I tried to get a picture of tin men, but these ones look more like stick men. Having said that though, what I mean by that is people are whole, they have emotions and they have feelings, and all of that is part of them as a whole. Our emotions drive our behaviours. So if you've got the thinking in your workplace that people should leave their emotions at the doormat as they walk through the workplace door, that doesn't build great relationships and it doesn't build humming teams. And lastly, I think what we need to do is drop the labels. Using DISC or any of these frameworks is not about labelling people into separate boxes. One of the biggest negative labels still in the workplaces today is generational labelling. It's entrenched negative thinking. You know, I think the most important thing about this particular slide and the message I want to share with you is in the green writing, because that's stuff that I talk about in my workshops. And I do strongly believe that when we label the generations in the workplaces, it's done often as an excuse or a reason to not take new learnings, to not learn how to efficiently communicate with others, to not recognise people are individuals. It's too easy to put them in boxes and label them and use that as an excuse. I'm just saying that we need to learn how to interact and not blame or generalise them as being all like that and all in the same boxes. And if this type of talk or generalisation or slanging is happening in your team, just be aware of it and address it. Because even paraphrasing a thought with, "Oh, just joking," doesn't mean that it doesn't have impact on others. So the point I'm making here, to give us a really good background or grounding in this, is to remember that that people are individuals, and individuals must be judged on their own merits. Yes, it's sometimes helpful to use frameworks and online assessments like social and emotional intelligence profiling, which is another framework I use, and DISC, and workplace motivators, as I said before. They're good starting bases and frameworks. It's helpful to sometimes have patterns and be able to see behaviour preferences and to identify areas for people to work on. Because life is a journey, not a destination. We're not born with a box set of behaviour traits. You actually choose your behaviour. and you can change and improve your behaviour. As a coach, that's the sort of stuff we do best, to help people identify in their behaviours what's working for them and what's not, and explore how they would like it to be, then put actions around that. So in life, it's really important to broaden our focus. And I love this torch. I love this analogy of the torch. People often walk around with blinkers on, narrow-minded. We sometimes call them, you know, too narrowly focused. They only focus on what they believe is right, and they're not open to alternative views. I'm sure we all know people like this. These people tend to only see the evidence that backs up their position. They actually don't look for the what else options. What could it be like? What could it look or feel like? What would a different result give me? They actually miss out on a lot of potentials. So the point of this is, when we look outside of our own reality, our own narrow focus, we learn so much more and become broader in our thinking and in our options. And that means we build better relationships with others and enjoy a fuller life experience. My favourite Nelson Mandela quote, if you don't mind me sharing that with you, is, "There is no passion to be found in playing small, in choosing a life that is less than the one we are capable of living." Now, taking it to the next step, this term, the map is not the territory, is actually a coaching term, and it's about understanding that the story that we take from stuff that happens is often different to the story others take from the same things that may happen. So for example, the guy in the middle, let's say he's looking at a map of Brisbane. It's only an outline. It's like, where's Brisbane? Suburbs, the river, the shops, the houses, the businesses. But it's not the whole picture. It's not the whole story. So my experience of Brisbane, using the same map as you are, will be different from yours. I'll visit the city, I'll take a different response, a different outcome. We both choose when we're there what we focus on and what experience we have from that. So my reality will be different to your reality. And understanding this in others is actually about asking great questions. Really genuinely interested in others, real curiosity without judgment. So what I'm saying is, be open to new thinking and new experiences, and learn from others' experiences. Don't approach or try to engage others with such a closed mind. Don't have your own made-up belief that's kind of like encased in concrete edging. Look outside of that. As managers, it's not okay to say it's my way or the highway. We need to be open to others and have others' input. That's what teamwork is. So there's a lot to learn about in the way we communicate with others, how others think and behave, importantly how we think and behave, why we respond or react as we do, how we communicate more effectively with others. A good question to ask yourself is, how's that working for you at the moment? Now we have some package solutions, and they're just a few I've listed here, that may assist you in your organisation to develop more effective communication and better team building practices. I've just grouped them here into 4 main things. The things I focus on are leadership development programs, workplace culture development programs, which is where team buildings fits in and also where DISC fits in. Apprentice supervisor training, I have a background in that, so that's another thing that I do to help apprentice supervisors with their communications and their languaging with young people. And of course, individual coaching. So today, We're going to go through what is DISC, because DISC is a helpful framework and how to actually build effective teams. A bit of history. We'll go through each of what is D, I, S and C. We'll look at the graphs, the benefits, and a little bit more on team building. Thanks for everyone to join me today. It looks like we've got everyone on board now, so fantastic. So let's look at the DISC model. I'm actually curious, with everyone on board now, how many of you have actually done DISC before? You know about DISC. Could we have a Y for yes and an N for no in the comments box? Have you done DISC before? Okay, thank you. Yeah, most of you have not. Okay, excellent. I'm glad I put the explanation from Tuesday in then today, because this will be helpful. Wonderful. For those who don't know the little box at the top, if webinars are a new mode of learning for you, little box at the top has a little comment section that you can type into, and all I see is your answers that come up, and I get a chance to sort of have a look at how we're running. It's one way of interacting on these rather than just hearing me go blah. Okay, one of the things about these jelly men, these coloured men, and the DISC colours themselves is it makes the 4 types that we'll talk about really easy to remember, and I'm a really strong believer in colours and how colours impact on how we feel. And I think this DISC model has chosen the colours really well. Understanding people, let's get into that. I've got some more exercises for you to do, so that will keep you engaged. I'm wondering, if you think of someone who was really easy to interact with, just write down yourself, what were the 3 main behaviour traits or things or reasons why someone was easy to react with? Just 3 words perhaps, 3 small phrases. There's a couple of describing words just over on the edge of the slide there that might be helpful. Was the person outgoing? Were they enthusiastic? Were they just a really good listener? And I also want you to write down, think of someone who was difficult to interact with, or you just didn't get them. They're just hard for you to sort of make any relationship with. Why do you think that was so? Are there some behaviour traits or things that just really grated with you, that you just didn't really resonate with you? Just write them down. You don't need to share them in the comments box, thank you. Because later when you get a feel, you'll get a feel for where these words and behaviours fit into the DISC model. And it's really good to be aware of those words that come up for you first, to think of them and notice them and react to them. Generally, that will be a good first level indication of where you may sit in the DISC framework and what your strong behaviour preferences are. Because we're naturally drawn to the people that are like us, that we get, that we understand, that think like we do. So now let's draw. I'm hoping you've got a piece of paper in front of you. I want you to draw quite a big quadrant there, an axis. If you can do that, that would be great. And what we're going to do is do like the slide here, a D in the top corner, top right-hand side, I, S, and C. If you don't have the colours, that's fine. If you do have some coloured pens in front of you, even better. So on the D stands for dominance, and it's a strong red colour. The I stands for influence, and it's a fun yellow colour. The S stands for steadiness, and it's an engaging green colour. And the C stands for compliance, and it's the standard, most accepted blue colour. Now while we're on that, I don't expect you to write all of this in, but we'll just go with it at the moment. If you look at the top half of your quadrant, if you put that horizontal line across the middle, the top half of the quadrant where you've got your D's and your C's are task or goal orientated people. And on the bottom end of the quadrant are people or relationship preferenced people. So if you write that on the bottom underneath your quadrant. On the right-hand side, these people all down the right-hand side, so your D's and your I's, they tend to be more extroverts. They are outgoing or tell-talk people, as we call it. They love to tell you what they're doing or tell you how to do it, and they love talking. 3 guesses where I fit. Okay, on the other side, on the left-hand side, again using the vertical line down the middle, we have the more reserved people, the more introverts, if you like. They tend to sit back, listen, and ask a lot of questions. Okay. So let's look at what drives these. Now, these ones have just, this particular slide has just got the P's in there, the problems, the people, the pace, the procedures. But I want you to write down P's and C's. It's easy to remember the P's and C's words because these are the things that people measure. The D's, up in the top right-hand corner, they love problems and challenges. Yes, there are people that love and thrive on problems and challenges. They love getting their teeth into a challenge. Now the I's are people and contacts. So the P and C word there, people and contacts. Or connections. These are your socialisers. Your green people or your S's, they love pace and consistency. So the C word there is consistency. These people are more resistant to change. And your C's, these people love procedures and constraints. They like things in a box. These are your detail people. You must tick their boxes. Interesting. I bet you're already putting some people's names into each corner. And hang on a minute, let's look at the intent of this model. Because DISC is not about right or wrong. It's not a measure of someone's intelligence. It's not an indication of their values or whether their values are right or wrong. It's not a measure of their skills or experience. And it doesn't matter whether they're educated or they have qualifications. It's got nothing to do with that. This is about what behaviours they choose. So there's no right or wrong. It's very important to remember that. There is no perfect score. And there is no one type better than another. What DISC is simply a way to observe human behaviour, to look at how people act and understand why they act in that way. When you notice stuff, and it's such an easy model, it's really fascinating to watch the dynamics in your teams, the power play. It's so useful to understand what you've got in your team and perhaps what you need in your team. Do you have lots of people who just want to have fun? Lots of I's? Do you have the mother hens who want to stop the boat from rocking and protect the team all the time? Lots of S's? Or do you have the ones who ask lots of questions just so everything has been considered and everything is ticked off before they will trust or go with a decision? This is not my model. This has been around for decades and it is really used very widely globally. Just give you a little overview of the history. It actually came about from William Marston. Right up until about 1947, he did the most research on behaviour types and wrote the first papers on it. And initially, in the early stages, it was used for lie detecting because observing behaviours was helping with work out what someone's intent or a typical preference might be when they were looking at people of interest for particular crimes, etc. It then evolved a lot further through the 1960s and 70s particularly. The first DISC assessment, if you like, the first questionnaire, interesting, back in the 1950s. So it's been around for a long time and continued to evolve and to find more uses to actually to help businesses and to help individuals in understanding behaviours. The main point of this slide is in the 1970s, the last dot point, TTI, which stands for Target Training International, they're an organisation, they've actually been using the model since the 1970s, which is a long history. And they've done lots of research and ongoing research. It's just really broadly now used around the world through that particular group. And when I was looking to see who I would do my accreditation with, I was looking for lots of facts, lots of data, lots of stuff to back up, and also a model or an organisation where they continually evolve and continue to do that research. They haven't arrived back in the 1950s, they've continued to work on it. Just very quickly also, this TTI that I use is using DISC and workplace motivators for a lot of different things. Lots of overlays, if you like, in how you can use it. The things I like about it is you can use it for individual performance. You can use it for team fit, which we're talking more about today, for getting the right people in the right roles. And for recruitment, it's fantastic for recruitment, which we'll talk about more in next week's webinar. And you'll notice the little Workplace Motivators logo in the bottom corner. I have later webinars that I'll do on that. It's now in 90 languages around the world, which means every 3 minutes someone completes an online assessment of DISC around the world, which is a massive amount of data that they can use for research. And what they've found from this is universally DISC works. Our behaviours fit into these 4 main types, all of our behaviours globally, around the world. Fantastic. That's the reason why it's estimated that 75% of Fortune 500 companies actually use DISC in their business. So let's get into it. I want you to go back to your fantastic artwork, the quadrant, and let's focus on the 4 boxes in these slides, just to give you a little bit more to fill in there so you understand where it's around. So, for someone who's a D, or the dominance, we said about the P and C word before, the problems and challenges. What they want is results. They're really focused on achieving their goals. The emotion that comes up for them, because remember I said emotion drives behaviour, is anger, or in this case I would call it more of a short fuse, because anger is such a strong word. It can just be that they get frustrated or disappointed easily. They tend to have less patience. And the fear, because fears also drive our behaviours, the fear is being taken advantage of, which in coaching terms we call a fear of failure. These people are strong, determined, possibly competitive, and they prefer to be in charge. They're not always in a leadership position, but their behaviour is they prefer to be in charge of themselves and sometimes of others. These people are at the top of the quadrant. Remember I said before they are task focused. They tend to be less people focused. So let's go to the happy, fun-loving I's. Influence. I stands for influence. Influencing because they love lots of connections, lots of socialising, being included. They have a great influence and rapport within the team. Now the P and C word that we used before, or the measures, are the people and contacts. What they want, what drives them, is recognition. They love it. These are the look at me, look at me, look at I. Love it. The emotion that drives them is optimism. They love to be happy. They like looking on the bright side of things, and they really love to work in a fun, creative environment. Guys, these are your salespeople. These are your ideas people. And they can be all over the shop. They generally have messy desks and very busy minds. We often call them shiny syndrome people because they're attracted to the next shiny thing, like bees to a honey. Bees to honey, I should say. So, let's slow the pace down a little. Easy does it, steady Eddie, and look at the S's, the steadiness. These people like pace and consistency. They want a relationship with the thing, with the team, wherever they are. They like to belong. They have empathy of others. They tend to be others-focused. For them, it's all about teamwork, collaboration, not looking for personal recognition particularly, although they do want to feel valued and they do want to be a valued member of your team. These are your very loyal people, and they are the glue that sticks your team together. And when you look at the compliance side of it, let's finish in the right way. Let's be precise, and the C's have it all covered. Just ask them. The measures for the C's are procedures and constraints, because they thrive on the need to be right, to check the list, to follow the rules and make sure everything is just right. So their want, of course, is things need to be right. Not necessarily that they have to be right all the time, but things need to be right. The things need to be done in the right way, correct, if you like. The fear that comes up with them, of course, is, the emotion that comes up for them, I should say, is fear. Because they're fearful of things not being right, of them getting it wrong. And the fear that comes up for them, I know that's confusing, but the fear that comes up for them is criticism of their work. This is the fear of not being good enough, of not getting it right. These people are your perfectionists. They sit, if you would look, on the opposite side to the I's in your people end of the scale for good reason. On the opposite quadrant, adjust, because they are neat and tidy. Everything's in its place. These are your analysts, project developers and managers, accountants would be a good one, engineers and specialists in their field. These guys just do things the right way. So it's actually not helpful to call someone just a D. You know, you're a D or you're such an I. Because in a team, to make up a team and to get your team humming, you actually need to bring all the skills. And people are a variety, or they have these 4 behaviour factors to varying degrees. You actually need all these types, and a person needs all of these sorts of things within their behavioural gamut, if you like, and be able to bring them to the fore when they need to. Let's look at the graphs just to give you an idea. So in your actual graphs that you get if you do an online assessment, it looks like this. Notice the 50% line across, the horizontal line. Most people only have, it's more common to have 2 above the line, which are your 2 higher preferences. Some will only have 1 above the line, particularly if they're very strong in one area and the rest of it is sort of, ho-hum. And it's less common to have it right across the line, sort of all very similar. Generally, that's a fairly balanced person if they've got it all close to the 50% line, and generally it's in their adapted style, which means they've learnt to adapt in that way. This person above, or on this slide, if you notice on the right-hand side, the red is highly predominant. But this person is actually having to drop that red or highly predominant D, if you like, down a little bit in their adapted side, which means they've learnt to actually tone their D down to fit in with others. So I thought you might be interested to know that around the world, and these are some of these great stats that we have from working with TTI, look at the percentage of the population, your 45%ers. They are your S's. No wonder we struggle to implement change in workplaces if you have a lot of S's in your team. And look at your 8%, your C's. Many workplaces don't have enough of these. These are your project managers. These are your people checking and monitoring all the boxes. And what I've seen in teams that I've worked with is often the manager or CEO or owner of a small business has to do these checks and balances, and it causes them a lot of stress if that's not what their natural preference is, because a lot of times they would rather be out there leading their team. So you need your C's within your team to do that. And look how, you know, rare they are to find. Going back to the graphs, I didn't really explain before the difference between adapted and natural. Your adapted style is your most changeable because you change that depending on the situation you're in. So for example, for me, if I was tested 2 years ago and then tested now, it would be really interesting to see the difference from when I was working in the public sector to what I'm doing now. I can tell you now that my adapted and my natural style, the two graphs, are almost exactly at the same levels, which is why I love doing what I'm doing now. Your natural style is your least changeable because it's your natural style. This is the real you. It means you're running on mains power. So the other one was running on battery, this one's running on mains. Jobs that line up to your natural behaviour preferences means less stress for you, means that you enjoy them more, you'll put more energy behind it, and you'll have more productivity. One of the exercises I do in a team building workshop is I have these coloured seat belts. They're quite strong. You put them along the floor. And it's really interesting to get people to stand where their natural strong preference is. So in my case, it would be a D. This is not my graph, by the way, but in my case, my strong preference is a D. To stand there and then to look at their adapted style. And if it actually is a lot further down the scale, if they're moving what we would call 20 points or more in the other direction, to just check with them how their stress levels are. How's that working for them? Now, patterns tell a story. And actually this one is closer. I'm quite happy to share. This one is closer to what my natural style is. If you were to put a dot at the top of each of the columns on the graph that you get from the assessment online, and you do it on your natural and on your adapted, what you get is a pattern like this. Now what that gives you is the ability then to place it into a wheel, which would look a little like this. Now when we do this online, we do, as a team, we actually do these wheels because you can see on a personal scale, individual scale, where you sit in the wheel. What's handy is, and it doesn't show on this one, but what's handy is there'll be a star on your sitting over the top of the little square there that is the same pattern as your adapted, as your natural style. And then there'll be a dot, a larger black dot, where your adapted style is. And to just see quite visually how far apart that is quite powerful. Also looking at the words around the side as to the sort of behaviours and the sort of values you may bring to a team, to see where that sits and to see how far outside of your natural style that is. So you end up with those little patterns, and as I said, it's a really good question to ask for someone when you look at their individual style. How is that working for you? This is a really great tool to assist in performance management. Yeah, that word. Because we all do them regularly, don't we? Yeah? Performance discussions should be more about the person's fit within the role, their achievements and their behaviours. Less about KPIs, because if the KPIs are not being achieved, then obviously there's some skills that either need to be developed or perhaps the person's natural style is not a good fit for this role. Now, I'm not telling you to sack them. It means that as a manager we can then look at how we adjust their role, perhaps add some stuff that they like, stuff that they're naturally good at, that floats their boat, and take away some of the stuff they don't like and make this a role that is a better fit to that person. Because that's how you show really good value, or the value that you have in that team member. Now that's a judgment call, of course, depending on how much you value the team member, but it is one way of using it within your performance discussions, another great framework to bring into them. What I like is also in a team, when we're talking about team building, is you can see when you plot where someone sits in their natural style around the wheel, you can see what's missing. You can see how balanced your team wheel is. Do you have the right types? Do you have too many of one type? You can see where your team's strengths are, where people fit. It really paints a powerful and enlightening picture, a lot of aha moments for a lot of businesses. I find this is one of the most useful and beneficial ways to use DISC in your business, particularly for team building. This is step one of how to discover what is happening now, and then to explore what do you need to do to improve this. Yes, this should be taken into account when recruiting new team members. What do you need more of? What skills and behaviours are missing? Do you have creative ideas, people, and no one to put the plan in place or the steps in place to make it happen, perhaps? Do you have too many Ds and not enough of the other types? Or do you have all S's? Remembering that 45% of the population are S's, chances are you may have a lot of them. We'll use this more next week when we talk about recruitment. So what does this mean? Why use DISC? Well, yes, it's insightful. Insightful in a way that goes, oh my God, that makes immediate sense. Now I understand why she's like that or why he does this. It's really simple to use and easy to remember. And it's intuitive. It's about real life situations. It works. And the other thing I love about it, of course, this is my high eye showing, is it's fun. When you do it in a team building exercise, it is really fun. I actually use those coloured belts I was talking about before, and you place a quadrant down on the floor on the carpet in the room, and you place the red and the yellow and the green and the blue belts along a line, a bit similar to the slide you saw earlier when you were doing your artwork. And those words that you came up with before about people that are easy to deal with and people that are difficult to deal with, we use words like that. I have them on laminated cards. We use words like that, and I get them to have 6 or 8 words each and place them down where they think it fits within the quadrant. It's a great learning to do perhaps halfway through where you're making sure that they've got it, they understand the model. So we do that first. And then secondly, what we do is we get them, with their assessment being done before they come to the workshop, to stand on the line where they fit. It's really quite powerful because in a team where you've really got people that don't get each other, just see how far apart they stand in the quadrant. If they're a really high D, for instance, and they're up in the top right-hand corner, and others are really strong S's and they're down on the other side, it's really quite powerful for them to go, yeah, and that is why. So the key benefits are, yep, it's simple and fun. It's a very powerful way to improve communication. And by that, and I'll talk a little bit more about that on Tuesday, by that, it's how you then use this. It's not useful to just put someone in a box and say, well, you're an S and I'm a D and that's why we don't get on. Thanks, see you later. It's not about that. It's about understanding what drives them and what the way in which you language things, the way in which you communicate to people, if you've got a lot of S's in your team, will need to be adapted slightly more to how they prefer to be communicated to. It's understanding the impact your behaviours and the way you communicate things has on others who don't come from the same thinking or behaviour preference. We're often unaware, I'm gobsmacked at times when I'm dealing with CEOs and with leaders, high-level managers, who are often unaware of the impact of the way in which they do things, the how they go about doing things, really impacts on others in their team. Just totally unaware. This is one of the tools that can help them see that. It does help reduce conflict. And it does help build trust and cooperation and commitment within a team. One of the exercises I do in a workshop, we also look at how do you identify this very quickly, 5 points on identifying this in your team. So this would be if you haven't had the online assessment done, but you're getting a fairly good feel for where people's strong preferences are just by the way they look, the way they present themselves on their desk, for instance, messy, tidy, neat, do the boxes have to be ticked, or are they, lots of ideas people? It's pretty easy to spot. But then it's what you do with that that's important. So it's how you communicate. So in the workshops we talk about how would be the most effective way to communicate with that person. Like, what would you say? If you came over the top and went blah, this person's reaction is more likely to be this. Whereas if you did it in this way, they're more likely to start to build trust and engagement and build rapport with you. Because when you know why people behave the way they choose to, then you can adjust your communication style and words and actions to better connect with them. This builds better relationships in teams, it reduces frustration and conflict, and really simply makes sense in the long run. Because you're going to end up with more effective teams, which for businesses means more profitability and more productivity. So in wrapping up today, I just wanted to show you that what we offer with DISC is obviously the online assessments I've been talking about. They're very easy and quick to do. They have a great report that comes back, and the wording around the report is quite personal. It will say, Jalinda has strengths in this. She does it in this way, blah, 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 which means people will perceive her as blah, blah, blah. What she needs to watch is that if she is inclined to do blah, 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 then this might be the impact on these type of people, blah, blah, blah. So the reason I'm saying it in that way is the report is a really easy read for someone to take it, go away and reflect on. What's good about that also is that coaching helps to unpack it with them. So if they look at the report and go, oh my God, I'm just going to stick that in the drawer and hope no one sees it, that's not helpful. By having a coaching unpack, what that does is it allows someone who has no vested interest in them, like myself, a coach that isn't their boss, isn't their partner, isn't someone that's trying to coat things in sugar coating, is just simply looking at the report with them. And as a coach, we go, tell me an example of where you think that might occur. Or tell me how you would approach that. It's all about how they do it and helping them to see. As I said before, in team building, and today's more about team building, it's fantastic for DISC workshops, for workshops about team building and understanding each other. If you've got a team that's just not getting on, if you've got a team where some of them are left out in the cold, out in the edges, where there seems to be a lot of ideas coming to the fore but nothing really happening, then this is gold for that. And just lastly, on that DISC leadership development and DISC for effective recruitment, I was going to do 4 of these webinars, and what I've decided next week is to roll the last 2 into the webinar that I'm doing on Tuesday. So very shortly we'll be sending out emails on that. The reason I'm doing that is the effective recruitment is something that does sit under leadership development. And those guys that have been on the webinar with me on Tuesday and then again today, and those of you that are with me for the first time today, you've got a good background, I believe, on what is DISC. Now taking it to the next level on how you might use that as a manager in your organisation and how you might use that in your management group to start with, and how you might use that for effective recruitment. I'd like to cover that on Tuesday. So I'm encouraging you to join me on Tuesday for that if that's something you'd like to know more about. Now we have a few moments, so I'm just wondering if anybody has any questions. Again, you can type fairly short questions would be good in the question box, and I'll do my best to read them quickly and give you an answer. And finally, I've just put up my contact details there just while I'm waiting for any questions to come through. The best way to contact me is by email, and the reason for that is, while I do have a great mobile phone, as we all do, I do a lot of my coaching over the phone using my mobile, Telstra to Telstra. I have a special deal for that. So often my phone will be engaged because of that. Now you can leave a message on my phone, of course, but if you're wanting to email me about an inquiry for me to come and talk to you in your business, I'm quite happy to do that. I was talking to a business yesterday and it was really quite powerful for them to see the things within their team that they need to be aware of, that they can bring this into the way that they've set up their organisation and what they're missing. They're about to recruit 2 or 3 more people in their management team. How powerful is it to actually know what you need in your management team and the sort of behaviours that you need to actually bring in there to help drive change in your team? Love this stuff. Okay, there doesn't seem to be any questions coming through. And just comments. So lovely comments, thank you. Excellent. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Thank you very much. Have a great day and I hope to see you on Tuesday. Thank you for joining me. Bye for now.